Going to get right into it with Mike. Mike is here, and he's going to be talking about personalizing your iPhone. We can do a lot of custom things with the iPhone, and every year it seems to be a little bit more. So this is going to be kind of an interesting thing to see what we can do with our iPhone. So, Mike, I am going to turn it all over to you and stop sharing, and the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dan. Welcome, everybody. And let me actually share my screen. So I need that turned on, I believe.
Yep, I'm taking care of that right now. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
There you go.
Okay.
I'm also going to spotlight you. So.
Oh, excellent.
All right.
Okay. So let me just move a couple things out of the way here, and we should be good to go. Okay, so you should be seeing a lovely slide called Personalize Your iPhone. Okay. And this is me. My name is Mike. This is about the third time I think I've spoken to this group, and it's been a very enjoyable experience every time. I'm based in California, and I do a little remote help sometimes with folks if it's doable remotely. But I've been teaching a lot of adult classes and speaking to user groups and the like. And so if you need to find me, this is where I am. So how many people remember the very first iPhone? This is what it looked like. Yeah. And this was pre-App Store, pre-5G, pre-lots of things. And there wasn't much customization you could do with it. In fact, I don't even think it had a passcode per se. Just slide to unlock, and you got a selection of apps from Apple. And this was it. This was the full boat at the time, about 17 items. And there wasn't really much you could do to change that. So if we fast forward to today, now we have customizable lock screens, we have notifications, we've got customizable home screens, widgets on the home screen. We've got a whole raft of things you can do to kind of make your iPhone into your iPhone. So whether it's making folders or whatever it may be, we're going to talk about that today. And the topics we're going to cover, probably in order, are home screen, which is that screen that you see of all the little app icons and widgets. Widgets, exactly. Wallpaper, the background to the home screen and the lock screen. The lock screen itself, which underwent some significant changes in iOS 16. And we're going to maybe try and touch a little bit on focus modes, which tie into all of these things in a kind of an interesting way. So that's it for the slides. I'm going to spare you any more of those. And I'm going to now stop sharing those and try to share my phone screen with you. So let me just switch over to that. And we'll be ready to go. Barring any problems.
Not yet.
Of course, we have a problem. Just hang on just one second. Okay, there we go. Okay, so let's talk about the home screen. This is what we're looking at here. The screen on your phone that shows various app icons. To customize this, it's really quite simple. All you need to do is touch and hold in an open space on the screen. That's really kind of the easiest way to do it. You can touch and hold an app icon as well, but if you do, you might get a menu that will pop up and you have to take an extra step to customize the home screen. But all you need to do is just touch and hold in an open space. I kind of like to use this area to the left and the right of the search button at the bottom of the first home screen. Just touch and hold. And you go into this high level thing that Apple calls jiggle mode, when all of the apps start wiggling on the screen, which is a cue to you that these apps can be rearranged and moved. So if I just swipe through here, I'm going to find maybe a home screen where I've got a little bit of room like this one. If I want to rearrange some of these app icons, I just touch and hold the app icon and move it somewhere else. So for example, if I want to take this app icon called passwords over here on the right and move it down toward the bottom, I just touch and hold, and when I do, it will lift up off the screen a little bit, and then just drag it where I want it to go. So the app icons have to fill from the top left-hand corner across and then down. So you can't really grab an app icon like this one and stick it over here in the right-hand corner. It's going to scoot back to the far left side, no matter how hard you try. If you want to move an app icon to a new home screen or a different home screen, you just touch and hold and drag in the direction you want to go and just hold your finger there. And that will create a new page. So if you're on your last home screen and you want to create a new home screen, just drag an app icon to the far right and hold there for a moment till the screen, the home screen slides in, and then just lift your finger up to drop the app icon there. So I could grab this Twitter icon and drag it to the far right. I could drag ice cubes to the far right, like this. And now I've got a new home screen that has just these 3 icons on it. And when you got your iPhone, you probably saw some icon that looked a little funny. It didn't really have anything but little tiny icons inside of it, like this example here, this shortcuts one that's kind of right in the middle of this screen. Or back over here, there's one called HomeKit that appears to be empty right now when we're in just jiggle mode. These are called folders. It's meant to replicate, to some degree, folders in a traditional desktop computer that you would access with the Finder. But to make a folder on the iPhone, there's no menu command to do that. You just take one app icon that's jiggling and drag it on top of another. So if I grab ice cubes here and I drag it on top of Twitter, I've now created a folder. And as you can see, the folder's picked up a name, social networking in this case. This name comes from one of the apps that you're using to create the folder. Every app in the App Store has a category associated with it. And so when you drag an app icon onto another, the folder name adopts the label or the category that one of the app icons has. If I tap to open this folder like this, I can see the 2 items that are inside. And folders, although you cannot put folders inside of folders, you can hold hundreds of app icons in one folder if you want to. This screen will swipe left and right, these little white dots at the bottom indicating how many screens are available inside the folder. And if you ever want to change the name of the folder that you're looking at, just go into jiggle mode, open the folder, and up at the top here, you'll see the name, social networking. I can tap the X to the right of the folder name to clear out the name. The keyboard comes up, and I can tap in here any name that I want and press done. Okay, and if I tap elsewhere on the screen, I now have a folder. If I want to put the passwords icon in there, just touch and hold, drag it in. Now, another nice thing about folders is when you open the folder up, you can drag these icons out. And when you take the very last one out of the folder, if I could do this, it'd be good. Let's see. Let's try this. When I take this ice cubes icon out of the junk folder, the folder will disappear. So you won't see any empty folders hanging around on your iPhone. The iPhone cleans up after itself very nicely. So that's folders. You can also customize the dock in the same way. The dock at the bottom of the screen can hold up to 4 icons. If you want to put a 5th one in or a new one in, you've got to take one out first. So I could drag this up, and I could drag this down, and I can put it in any of these 4 slots. You can even, if you like, put a folder in the dock, which is an easy way to get access to more than 4 icons from the dock if you need that. Okay, that's folders and rearranging icons on the home screen. Now, what about this thing over here in the upper right-hand corner? This is a widget. Widgets are really a little peek into an application. It can also serve as kind of a launching pad to an application. If you have a widget visible on a home screen, you can tap the widget and it will open the app that it refers to. So how do you put widgets on the home screen? Well, most of you are probably familiar with widgets a little bit, because to the left of the very first home screen is what's called the Today view. And this Today view is made up of nothing but widgets. But instead of having to go to the Today view, you can put widgets right on the home screen if you like. To do that, you just go into jiggle mode, just touch and hold an open spot on the screen, and a plus sign shows up in the upper left-hand corner, which means add. In this case, when you tap this, you go into what's called the widget gallery. So present here on the screen are widgets for applications that I have on my phone. The widgets themselves are created by the app developers. Not every app has widgets, but if widgets are available, they'll be included in the app when you download the app from the App Store. So as an example, if I wanted to grab, say, this Apple News widget right here and put it on a home screen, I could just give it a tap. And another view of the Today widget will show up. And as you can see from the bottom of the screen, there's about 6 dots here at the bottom, which means the News app has 6 different styles of widgets available. I'm just going to go all the way back to the beginning. And so here is a very small widget that's focused on a particular topic that I'm interested in. In this case, it happens to be basketball, I think. So this widget takes up the space of about 4 app icons. It's the smallest size widget you can put on the iPhone. Here is a double size widget. Again, a single topic. Here's the full size widget. Again, single topic oriented, right? This one takes up most of a home screen space. Here is today's top stories from the Apple News app in a small widget, a medium widget, and a large widget. So if I wanted to add this widget or one of these widgets to the home screen, let's take this medium size one. I'll just tap Add Widget, and that drops the widget onto the home screen. And these can be rearranged. If I want to take this widget and try to move it around a little bit, if I could put more app icons in here, I could have this widget wrap around or go in different spots. Any app icons that this widget displaces just goes onto the next home screen like that. So I could take this widget and drag it up here maybe. And that's adding a widget to the home screen. In this case, tapping one of these stories in the widget when you're out of jiggle mode will take you to that story in the News app. But let's say I want to add another widget. How about we go get, let's get a stocks widget. So here's a single stock. Here are several stocks. Here's another good stock widget that's showing me 3 different live stock prices. I want to add this one. It drops in here above this other news widget, and it's pushing app icons onto the next screen. Now, one nice thing about the widgets is that you can stack them up so they take up less space. So if you have widgets that are of the same size, small, medium, or large, and you drag one on top of another, you've now created a widget stack. And to the right of this widget, you can see there are 2 dots, 2 white dots. If I swipe through these by just swiping down on them, I can switch to stocks with a single swipe without having to have both widgets displayed on the screen at the same time. Now, back here on my very first home screen, there's a Photos widget on the screen, but this is also a widget stack. If I swipe through this, I can get a smart thermostat reading. I can see my calendar at a glance. Here's a small stocks widget, the local weather. If I tap, it'll go ahead and open the app for me. Here's a battery widget for my watch and phone. So as I swipe through these, you see those little white dots illuminate differently. You can customize this back a little bit as well. Just touch and hold the widgets, and you can edit the stack. So here's my list of 6 widgets. If I want to remove one of these widgets from the stack, I can just tap the minus button in the corner. And this will remove the widget from the stack. It doesn't delete the app. It doesn't delete any of the data. It just takes the widget out of the stack. And another interesting thing about widget stacks, down here in the lower left-hand corner, there's a button called Smart Rotate. What this does is the phone looks at the widgets that are in the stack. And if it thinks that there's something in here that might be of relevance to you, it will rotate that widget to the top of the stack automatically. So for example, if I had a calendar appointment coming up, roughly 15 minutes before the calendar appointment was due to happen, the calendar widget may rotate to the top of the screen to get my attention. Or if, for example, the battery widget, I have a battery that maybe is running low, the battery widget may rotate to the top. Or the weather widget may rotate to the top if it's about to rain in the next 10 minutes. Again, this is what's called Smart Rotate, and you can turn that on or off just by tapping this little blue button in the lower left-hand corner when you're editing the widget stack. And as I mentioned earlier with widgets, to the left of your very first home screen is something called the Today view, and this is composed entirely of widgets. You can edit this in really the same way. Just go all the way down to the bottom of the Today view. You'll see an edit button. And when you tap this, it'll take you to the widget gallery by tapping the plus button in the upper left corner. And you can pick a widget from the widget gallery to add it there if you like. So that's home screen and widgets. Do you want to take any questions now, if there are any?
Not well. Thomas Hopkins, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, thank you. It's a very interesting talk. I noticed that there's a home screen reset in general in settings, and I've used that occasionally. And how does Apple decide which apps go in the front and then which apps go in the secondary pages?
I have no idea how they decide that. I just know that when you are looking at, you take a new iPhone out of the box, if you've never set one up before, you're going to find a lot of commonly used first-party apps on the first home screen and then onto the second. So I'm sure that Apple has a way of measuring who's using what apps how often, and they're making a decision about where to place those apps by default on the home screen for brand new devices. But you can customize.
Thank you.
Okay, you can customize it all you like.
All right, thank you, Thomas. Alan Weinstein, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, I'm sure it's very simple, but how do you get rid of a widget?
How do you get rid of a widget? Well, you can go into jiggle mode. And in the upper left-hand corner of the widget, there's a little minus button up here by the words Dow Jones. If I tap this, this will remove the entire stack, right? I've got 2 widgets stacked up here, so this will remove the stack. If I want to just remove one widget from the stack, I can touch and hold these widgets and pick Edit the Stack. And inside the stack, each widget has a minus button in the upper left-hand corner. If I just tap this, that'll remove the widget from the stack and just leave me with the news widget.
And if you want to move the whole stack, just take away the whole stack?
Yeah, you can, I'll go back here to the beginning. I've got a stack right here. If I touch and hold this stack and I tap, I can tap remove the stack, and that'll delete the entire stack of widgets, but none of the data.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Alan. All right, all yours, Mike.
Okay. So if you're following along on the handout, we're at the bottom of page 2. And I want to take a minute to talk about the app library. This was something that was added to the iPhone just a couple of years ago. It used to be that when you downloaded an app from the App Store, it had to go on the home screen. There was nowhere else for it to go from a user-facing point of view. But if you scroll through your home screens, and when you get to your last home screen, you scroll one more time, this is what the app library looks like. And there's nothing here for you to organize. This is all organized for you by the phone itself. Every app on your phone will appear in the app library. And they're also broken down here at first glance by category. And you cannot change these categories. These categories, again, are coming from the App Store and the apps themselves. So for example, down here, I have something called Arcade. These are all apps from the Apple Arcade subscription service, all grouped together in a category called Arcade. The first two at the top, this one here on the left called Suggestions, this is Siri suggestions. This is Siri thinking, well, what do you usually do at this time of the day? Or what are you usually doing at this location? Or what apps have you opened recently? Maybe you'd like to open these again. And these will change during the course of the day, depending upon what I'm doing and how I've been using the phone. On the right, there's a section of recently added apps. So if you download an app and it doesn't go to the home screen, for reasons we'll talk about in a minute, you can go back here to recently added and find it here relatively quickly. And the other categories, again, are created by the phone based upon the app categories that are associated with the apps themselves. So for example, with this utilities section over here, second row on the right, anytime you see a full-size app icon, like this one for Safari, or Find My, or Deliveries, you can tap that to open the app. If you see a cluster of 4 little apps in the lower right-hand corner of one of these categories, that means there are more apps in this category than can be shown on the screen, more than 4, basically. So if I tap this little cluster in the lower right-hand corner of the utilities palette, I'm going to get an alphabetical list of every app on my phone that falls into this category called utilities. And I can tap any app that I see here to open that app up directly. To get out of this utilities screen, just tap in an open space on the screen and you'll go back to the app library. You can also search the app library. There's a search field at the very top. When you tap it, an alphabetical list of every app you have will appear on the screen from A to Z. But if you want to just search for an app, you can just type it in. I could type in Zoom, for example, and that will find the Zoom app. I could tap that, it would open it. Another thing you can do from the app library is, as I mentioned earlier, because you're no longer required to keep every app you have on a home screen, you can add an app to a home screen just by dragging it from the app library. So for example, if I go back into this utilities group, and let's suppose I want to take this app called Camo right over here and put it on one of my home screens. I can just touch and hold and drag it out and drop it on a home screen. Okay, so let me do that one more time. I'll go back into utilities and I'll get this app called Authy right here. Just touch and hold, drag it out, drop it on a home screen. So what's really going on here with the app library, if you're a longtime Mac user, you might be familiar with a concept called aliases. As you probably know, the Mac at the bottom of the screen, or maybe on the side if you've moved it, contains a dock. And in that dock are a whole bunch of app icons or folders or documents you placed on the right side of the dock. All of those app icons at the bottom of the screen are just aliases, pointers really to where the real app lives. So in the case of applications on your Mac, pretty much all your applications are probably in the applications folder. And those dock app icons are just aliases. They're not the apps themselves. They're just pointers to where the real apps live. So when you click an icon in the dock, the Mac goes out and finds the real original app icon and opens it for you. And so the same kind of thing is really going on here. Every app lives in the app library, but not every app lives on a home screen. So you can kind of think about the app library as the applications folder, for lack of a better comparison. And these icons on the home screen are really more like aliases. When you tap one of these, it goes to the app library and opens up the app for you. Now, this leads to some interesting things because, for example, you could create a home screen that was built for one particular purpose. Let's suppose you want to build a travel home screen. And on that home screen, you wanted to include things like airline apps, flight tracking apps, weather apps, Safari, anything related to travel, you could place on one particular home screen if you like. And many of these app icons that are in the app library can be placed on multiple home screens. So for example, I could open up, or I could take Safari from here and put it on this home screen. Even though it's down in the dock, even though it may be on even some other home screen. I can put Safari on multiple home screens and launch it from any of those. So we'll see a little bit more about why this might be important when we get to focus modes, but just keep in mind that the easiest way to think about this is these apps on the home screen are acting like aliases on the Mac and going out and finding the original app and opening it up for you. So as I mentioned earlier, you can choose not to put every app on the home screen if you like. You can set this up on your phone in the Settings app. So if I tap Settings and I tap Home Screen, I can choose to have newly downloaded apps go to the home screen or only go to the app library. So every app you download goes to the app library, no matter what. But you could also choose to say, all right, go to the app library, but also go to the home screen by checking this box. If I instead check app library only, then new apps I download only go to the app library. They don't go onto a home screen. So it's purely up to you how you want to handle this. If you think that you are, your home screens are being overrun by too many app icons, then maybe you'll choose put the newly downloaded apps to the app library only, so that you're not constantly filling up home screens and spawning new home screens. But that's your choice. Okay? Any questions about that?
Not yet.
Okay.
Doing good.
Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
Next, what about home screens themselves? If I've got an app library that has every app, I know I can go in here and get an app that maybe doesn't appear on the home screen. But what if your home screens start to kind of get a little bit out of control? You just have too many of these. You want to simplify things a little bit. How can you handle this? Well, we're going to go back into jiggle mode. Just touch and hold any open spot on a home screen. And you'll notice at the bottom of the home screen, that button that used to say search now has dots on it. Until iOS 16, there were only dots at the bottom of the screen. The search button was a recent and helpful addition. But when I'm in jiggle mode, these dots at the bottom of the screen are now outlined a little bit. This is also a button. So if you tap it, you get this. So these are actually all the home screens that I have on this phone. But the only ones that are visible are the ones with the check mark underneath it. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 other home screens that are not even visible. This is from the early days of not being able to use the app library, right? Every app had to go on a home screen, and here they are. I don't know if you're like me, but I know where every app is on the very first home screen, and I know where most of the apps are on the second home screen. And after that, I have no idea where an app is on my phone. So I use the search mechanism to bring it up when I need it. But you can hide or show your app, your home screens, by just tapping the circle beneath them. So if I tap these other circles here and turn these screens back on, I'm now going to have way more home screens than I need. You can also, in addition to checking and unchecking these circles to show or hide home screens, you can delete entire home screens by tapping the minus button in the upper left-hand corner. And again, this does not delete the apps or any of the data. It just deletes the home screen. So it's like that alias idea. I'm just removing the aliases. I'm removing the pointers to the original apps and just getting rid of the home screen entirely. But I'm not deleting any of the apps. I could also choose to rearrange the home screens. So if I wanted to take this one that we've been working on here and make that my very first home screen, I could just touch and hold and drag it up and change the order of the home screens just by dragging them around. And now when I'm done, my very first home screen looks like this. There's my old home screen is now second, and so forth. And that's everything about the home screen that I've got to offer. Anybody have any other questions?
Billy McKee, can you please unmute yourself and ask a question?
Thanks, Tita. Mike, there's one app library, and it looks as if there's only one home screen place that you can download. Can you download an app to multiple home screens?
No, when an app gets downloaded to the home screen, it only shows up once. And I think in most cases, although I've run into this in the past with some apps, you can just go back into the app library and find the app and drag it out to another home screen. So for example, let's see if this one will work. I have the Files app up here in the upper left-hand corner of this home screen. If I want to download or if I want to add that Files app to another screen, I can touch and hold and drag it out and drop it here. So now the Files app, the alias for the Files app is on this screen and this screen. But when you download the app, the only thing it'll do is it'll download to the app library for sure. And if you want to download it to the home screen, usually what it does is it fills up the last open space on whatever home screen it can find, typically. Like these home screens are full. So if I were to download a new app, it would place it right here to the right of the Files app. And then I think I've run into certain circumstances where I've tried to put an app onto multiple home screens and it didn't seem to work. That might be something that a developer has to build into the app. But I think most developers are doing that, if I'm not mistaken.
That answer your question, Billy?
Thank you very much.
All
Okay.
right. Okay. Carl Seacrest, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, if you have a home screen hidden, unchecked and hidden, will it be available and appear for use in a focus mode?
Yes, I believe it will. I don't think it has to be visible in order to be used in a focus mode.
Okay, thank you.
All right. All right. Thank you. Carl Faust, do you have a question?
Yes, I have a home screen. The home screen is full, and I want to move some other apps to that home screen. How do I move them to that screen? Because when I move them, they won't take it. Sometimes they won't take it when you move it, like you said.
Yeah, it's a little tricky sometimes. So if you look at this home screen here, this one's full. And the last icon down here in the lower right-hand corner is for Safari. So what you can do one of two things. You can remove an app icon from a home screen to open up space. Or if, for example, I want to take this passwords icon and I want to put it on the previous home screen, I can touch and hold. I can also touch edit home screen. Then touch and hold the app icon and drag it to the left. And now if I put it on this home screen anywhere, right, you got to kind of get it in between these apps. If you put it on top, it's going to make a folder, which isn't what you want. But if I put this app icon anywhere on this home screen, it's going to take the last app icon that was in the lower right-hand corner before, Safari, and push it to the succeeding home screen. So just even if your home screen is full, just drag the app icon to the left or the right, whichever screen you want to go to. And if the screen you're trying to put the app on is full, it'll push an app icon, the very last one in the lower right-hand corner. It'll just push it onto the next home screen for you.
Okay, now you said you can take your very last icon and take it off the home screen, and then you can put one on there. But when I try
Yeah.
that,
Yeah, so for example, if I put Safari back down here, right? So if I wanted to open up a space on this screen, I could go into jiggle mode and I could say, click the minus button on Safari here in the upper left-hand corner. And this will remove it from the screen, right?
okay,
Now I've got a space open. I could go back in here and grab this Honus diet thing, drag it over and drop it in that corner if I want. That's another thing I could do.
oh yeah, I got it now. Thank you.
Okay, whichever one
Okay.
works best for you.
All right, thank you, Carl. Ronald Atchison, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, I've spent many happy hours rearranging home screens. I
I'll bet
do.
you have.
Yeah, I have. And I've tried things like words and travel, medicine, and so on that interest me, and cluttering them on the front screen. But sometimes it's from what you've said, it might be easier to have separate home screens for these sort of folders.
Yeah, you could do that. I used to try to do that too. I used to try to keep the most commonly used apps on the first screen, and then I built a screen that had like video streaming apps, or I built another screen that had something related to a particular topic. And things rapidly got out of control. So you can certainly do that. That's certainly doable. The biggest thing that I found was was putting things into folders that need to be in folders. So for example, I have a lot of smart home products in our house, and it's all running through HomeKit and this home app you see here. But then to the right of this, I've got a folder called HomeKit, and in here are all of the apps from the manufacturers of the products just in one place, right? So that if I need to get to a particular smart home products app, I can go in here to get it if there's something in there that I really need to work with. So folders are a plus for certain types of apps. But then you could also take that further and make entire home screens that were devoted to one particular thing, like exercise or travel or research or something along those lines. Social media, say.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ronald. All right, Ed Adams, you're next, and then Stephen, you're after Ed. Ed, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
So this isn't related specifically to home screens and stuff, but there's a feature inside the iPhone and the iPad that if you don't use an app for a while, it will download it. It'll keep it as far as the data, but it downloads the app and you have to reload it to do it. Is there any way to tag an app and say, don't do that to that particular app?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay.
I think the way to avoid that is just turn that switch off and then manually handle deleting apps you don't use.
So the other question I might throw at you is, since you're a iPhone guy and you're into organization, why are you keeping all of those home pages that you don't use?
Because sometimes they teach a class like this and they need to demonstrate that there are home pages there that I don't use.
That makes sense. I was gonna give you a real hard time, but that does make sense. Thank you.
And I'm lazy. I'm just like you. I'm lazy.
Okay, Stephen Ramirez, can you unmute yourself and ask your question, please?
I'd like to get your thoughts on, do you think we will ever see the day when everything you've showed us on your phone will sync over to the iPad screen?
Boy, that would be great, wouldn't it? To have that option. But I don't know. We'll have to see. There's a feature on Apple TV that syncs home screens of Apple TVs throughout the house. So it's clearly something that can be done, I think, but whether they'll do it or not, I don't know. Be nice to have a switch to turn that on if you wanted it.
Okay. All right. Are you game for more questions or do you want to continue, Mike?
Let's press on a little bit and then we'll take a few more.
All right. Go
Make
ahead.
sure we get through most of this. Okay, next up, if you're following the handout, we're on page 4. We're going to talk about wallpaper. Wallpaper is this background image behind apps and things. So if you tap the Settings app, you'll see an option here for wallpaper. This has been in the phone for a very, very long time, but what's new in iOS 16 is this whole setting has been reworked to accommodate making changes to lock screen and home screen wallpapers in a different way. So as you can see here, I've got a set of wallpapers, one for the lock screen here on the left that shows the moon, and one for home screens on the right that just puts a solid color behind the app icons. But as you can see, I've got other combinations here. Some of them are kind of some standard Apple things. Some are some ones that I've customized a little bit, right? So if you want to add a new wallpaper to your device, you can swipe to the end where you see this new set, or you can just tap the big blue button here that says add a new wallpaper. So when you do that, you'll see something like this. There's a row of category icons up here along the top for different styles of wallpapers that you can use. Some involve photos, some involve emoji, some can involve weather or astronomy or colors. You'll also see this is a lot like the widget gallery. Here's some examples of some lock screen wallpapers you could try. Here are some photos that are in my Photos app on my phone that the phone has looked through to try to find photos that would look good on home screens. And they're looking for not just any old random photo, but photos that it thinks would look good on a lock screen. And as you can see, sometimes the photo sits in front of the time on the lock screen. Sometimes it sits behind, right? There's also photo shuffle that can look through your photos and dynamically shuffle them during the course of the day. Weather and astronomy, Unity, emoji, and other various collections and colors. So if you want to add a new wallpaper to your phone, just tap the one you're interested in. I'm going to take I'm going to take a flyer here. I'm going to pick one of these emoji ones. So I'm going to pick this one here on the left, this one with the airplane and the clouds. And this is an example of what the lock screen can look like. Each of these lock screen categories have slightly different features to them. So if you decide to explore these, for example, the photos lock screens have different characteristics than, say, an emoji lock screen might have. But down here at the bottom, you can see this is called the small grid emoji lock screen. And there's 5 buttons down here at the bottom, or 5 lights, basically. If I swipe on this, I'll see the medium grid, large grid, a rings grid, and a spiral grid. Boy, this is not such a great lock screen for an airplane, I don't think, but we're going to work with it. So here's the spiral grid lock screen. And to the left down here, there's a little emoji icon in the lower left-hand corner. If I tap that, I can add additional emoji to this screen. So right now, this lock screen, which can consist of up to 6 different emoji, is using 4. An airplane followed by 3 clouds. If I wanted to delete this 3rd cloud by tapping the delete button and picking something else, like maybe this cat here, and maybe I'll add a smiley face or something, or I can scroll through here and pick some other emoji, like maybe a giraffe, okay? I've now put in 6 different emoji. That's the most that this screen can take. And now I think I'm in the middle of the Wizard of Oz or something. It's like a twister has picked up every animal from the zoo and is, flying it through the air. So that's an example of adding emoji and also changing the way the lock screen itself is structured. Now, up above here, you see the time at 9:18, and there's also a slot above the emoji or above the time and below the time. This is for widgets on the lock screen. Widgets on the lock screen are different from widgets in the Today view or the home screen. They're much more limited. They're meant to provide glanceable information to you in a very, very limited space. So for example, if I tap this Wednesday 8, Cupertino, 9:16 a.m., this little thin widget up here at the top, if I tap this, a little widget gallery opens up that allows me to pick from various types of widgets to put in that slot. So if, for example, I wanted to put in here like the next delivery that was coming from somewhere through the parcel app, I could put that in. If I wanted to put in a stock symbol, I could put that in. If I was interested in the chance of rain today, I could put that in. And so I'm going to do that 60% today here in California. I'm going to tap this. And so right here next to the date and day is the chance of rain today, 90%. The clock, the 9:19 clock, if I tap that, I can pick a different font and color for this clock. So if I wanted to change the clock style, I can just tap any one of these. And I can change the color by tapping the color bar down here. So I'm not sure what's going to look good on this background. So I'm going to pick the worst possible thing I can, maybe a light green. I can darken the color or lighten the color from here. And the third slot beneath the time is also for adding widgets. If I tap this, this is what home screen widgets look like. They look much, much different from widgets you would put on the home screen or in the Today view. And they also take up much less space. So this spot up here where these widgets can be added beneath the time can consist of up to 4 of these little widgets, or 2 of the bigger widgets, or some combination thereof. So if I want to add a weather widget here, I can tap this one in the lower right-hand corner. It says partly cloudy, and add that widget to this slot. I could stop right there and that'd be the only widget there, but instead I want to put in my exercise rings, and how about the watch battery, and I can drag these to change the order if I want. Maybe I have to take these out to reorder them. I can remove them by tapping the minus button, put something else in there instead. And that's how much customization I can do to the lock screen. And this is going to be the worst lock screen you've ever seen in your life. Totally unreadable, totally mystifying. But when I want to add this as a lock screen, I tap the add button in the upper right-hand corner. And now I'm given this choice. My lock screen is on the left, and on the right is the pair to that. It's the same image blurred and inserted behind the home screens, right? So the lock screen will have this funky emoji look to it, and the home screens have the exact same thing, only it's blurred in the background to allow you to see the app icons and their names. But if you don't want to do that, if you want to customize the home screen instead, you can tap Customize Home Screen and change the way the home screen looks. So instead of using a pair, as is indicated here in the lower left-hand corner, I could put a color behind it. And I can change that color if I want by tapping the color icon, picking something different. Or I could pick a gradient to put behind it and change the gradient color as well. Or I could put a photo behind it. My photo library can open and I can pick a picture of the dog maybe. Yeah, as a natural photo, a black and white photo, duotone photo, or a color wash photo. And if the photo is too distracting, I can tap the blur button in the lower right-hand corner to blur it. So there's lots of customization options you have. You can go to town with this, tap done. And now this is my new lock screen look and my new home screen look. And it's terrible, okay? But I can switch between them simply by swiping and then tap Set as Current to pick the one that you want. Okay? So that's customizing the home screen and customizing the lock screen wallpaper. Any questions about that? Part of the reason why this was done with the lock screen was because a new feature was added to iOS 16 to allow, I think it's the 14 Pro phones, the ability to have an always-on lock screen. Similar to the always-on display on the Apple Watch. On the iPhone, certain models of the iPhone, if you tap display and brightness, there's an option here for an always-on display, which allows your phone screen to stay on at a slightly dimmer brightness with way less refresh rate going on, so that you can glance at your phone and see the time without having to pick it up or touch it or turn it on or anything. And you can glance at the lock screen to see the widgets. So if the widgets contain glanceable information like a stock price or your next appointment for the day or the weather outside, if your phone is capable of doing the always-on display, you can turn that on and get access to that information from the phone without having to touch it, right? This is a little disconcerting for most iPhone owners who are used to knowing that when they look at the iPhone screen, if it's on, that means I want to turn it off, right? Click the button to turn it off to save the battery life. So I tried this for a little while and said, nah, this is a little too weird for me right now. I think I'm not going to go with the always-on display. I'll turn that off and not constantly be concerned that I left my phone on unnecessarily with the always-on display working.
You ready for a bunch of questions?
Let's go.
Okay, I'm going to actually start this from the reverse order because they are pertinent to what we're discussing right now. Michael Rath, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, thank you, Cheetah. I haven't been a long time user of iPhones, but I've never bothered with much in the way of modifying my screens because frankly, I don't care. But what is the difference between a lock screen and not a lock screen?
Well, what you're seeing on the screen right now is a home screen, okay? If I turn the power off on my phone and turn it back on, that's the lock screen. Where you see the clock, this is the lock screen. And then once you unlock the phone, either with a passcode or Face ID or Touch ID, then you're taken to the lock screen, or sorry, to the home screen.
Hopefully that clears that up for you and for a couple of other people who were inquiring on the same question. Okay. Keith Kaiser, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, good afternoon. I have chosen a series of my own photos to use in my wallpaper, and I'd like to be able to tap on them to go from one to the other. Currently, if you try to do that, your suggestions are to use whatever Apple has selected for you, or to reselect all of your photos that you want to use. Isn't there a way just to tell it to start using the ones you've already selected?
Sounds like there isn't to me. I haven't used that photo option yet, but let me just take a quick look here. So we want to go to customize the lock screen under wallpaper. So if I were to pick a new wallpaper and I pick, you're talking about photo shuffle, is that the one you're talking about?
Correct, the photo shuffles.
Okay, so you get these options here where the phone will look through here and you can choose people, pets, or cities. So in this case, I've got people, pets, and cities obvious here. If I want to remove the cities, I can do that and remove the pets.
But you can look at the bottom. If you look at the bottom, it also says select photos manually
right?
Or use featured photos.
Right.
Featured photos you have not necessarily selected.
Correct.
I would like to be able to use just the ones I have previously selected to become my backgrounds.
Okay, so I think what you should do, one of the easiest way to do this is take those photos in the Photos app and put them in an album. And then but with the album selector up here at the top, pick albums and then select whichever album you want. And from inside the albums, pick the photos that you want to have rotate through.
I hadn't thought of that. That looks perfect as the solution I need.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
so
right.
here are the 5 people, the 5 photos that I've picked, and they'll rotate between those. So that you might try that, see if that
I
helps you.
will. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Billy McKee, can you please unmute yourself and ask a question?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. One of the issues up until recently has been that if you take photographs that are in landscape mode, in other words, you turn the phone on its side, it doesn't fit terribly well with using it in using it as either wallpaper or as a home screen. Has there been any improvement in that, or is the software just going to look for portrait type photographs and ignore landscape ones, or have they found a workaround for that?
Well, I can tell you, you see this one on my screen right here, the dog sitting on the curb? I believe that was a landscape photo. And the wallpaper settings is focused just on the dog, and it's going to show up vertically, obviously, on the phone. But I'm pretty sure that was a landscape photo. I think it's automatically looking through and resizing and reformatting to make sure that it fits properly on the screen. I'm just going to go into my albums list here. So see this photo right down here? This is a landscape photo. And the wallpaper settings on the phone just focused on the dog, the vertical part of the dog right here.
So it's pretty much like Instagram then. It just crops tight to fit the space, and you may lose. Yeah, fine. Okay. If that's the same, that's all I need to know. Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Linda Farabee, can you please unmute yourself and ask a question? Were you done, Billy, with your questions?
Yeah, fine. Do you think there's any possibility in the future that that's going to change? Because people are beginning to play with iPhone 14s pretty much like cameras because of Pro RAW, and a lot of the time people are turning things on the side, and just is it one of those things where it's just going to be cropping and that's it, or do you envisage in the future that somebody may find a workaround for this cropping? Say, for example, keep the whole photo but make it smaller.
I'd be surprised if that happened. I think because most people are going to be holding the phone vertically when they unlock it. So to make the lock screen look as good as possible, there's probably still going to be cropping going on. That'd be my guess.
All right, thank you, Billy. Linda, go ahead.
Billy, nice talk. I'm enjoying this. The time 9:41, is that always at the top? Can you not move it to the bottom like with the watch?
No, when you look at the lock screen, there's a slot for widgets, then there's the time, and then there's another slot for widgets. That doesn't move. You can't move those.
Can you set it where it is behind the face that you have on that lock screen or on that wallpaper?
I think that the phone makes that decision itself, I believe. Like if I go in here to this particular lock screen, and if I tap the clock, there's not an option to move the clock behind the image. Like in this case, if it were to move behind the image, the entire 9 would be obscured by the hat, right? So I think the phone is making that call by itself. Down here in the lower right-hand corner, there's a little more button that has depth effect on it. Let me try something else here. Let me see if I can find a photo where it's actually behind the time. Like this one, tap the clock. Yeah, I can't change it here. It's possible. Let me add another wallpaper and I'll just pick a photo. So here's a photo. Add a new wallpaper. Photos. Let's pick this one maybe. I'll say, so now the clock is behind the little boy's head, right?
Right.
Try and tap this more button in the corner. So depth effect here is turned on. If I tap this to turn this off, it puts the clock in front, okay? So yes, you can fiddle with that a little bit depending on the photo.
Okay, so how do you get the depth effect? I click on my depth effect and nothing happens.
So when I tap the clock, okay,
Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't even tap the clock. I tap the more button in the lower right-hand corner and the menu pops up, right?
Right.
If there's no check mark in front of depth effect, when you tap depth effect, it creates the depth effect, right? It puts the clock behind the head.
Okay.
So this check mark that you see on my screen is telling me the depth effect is in effect right now. It's active. So
Okay.
this is like a toggle switch. You tap it to turn it on and tap it to turn it off.
Okay, I'm going to try to duplicate that. Thank you. That's exactly what I wanted.
All right.
All
Good
right.
shot.
Thank you,
Okay.
Linda.
My
Charles
depth-
Anthony. Linda, were you done?
Well, my depth effect is grayed out. So does that mean
That probably means you can't do it for that particular photo, right?
huh?
Like if I go back here, see this one right here?
Yes.
Okay. If I tap the more button in the corner, my depth effect is grayed out.
That's exactly what mine does.
Because if you could turn it on, then the hours, the 9 here, would be completely behind the hat.
Sure.
You couldn't see it at all. And so I think that the software is making a decision here that if you want to use the depth effect, you need to be able to see enough of the numbers in the time to be able to tell what the time is.
Okay, that
In
makes
this-
sense.
Yeah, in this case, you couldn't see the hours at all. So I think that's maybe why that option isn't there.
Okay, thank you very much.
We put red contact lenses on her, by the way, to match her getup that year.
Melissa Green has an interesting comment about, Melissa, can you please unmute yourself and make your comment?
Well, I'm wondering if the portrait mode has, when you take a picture in portrait mode, if that changes that depth effect for the time.
I doubt it. I think that the depth effect on the clock for the lock screen is really has to do with, will the time be too much obscured that you couldn't tell what time it is? I think you could take a portrait photo and you could put it on your lock screen. And the background will be blurred, person in the photo will be nice and sharp. And then the depth effect setting that you see here really has to do with how's the clock going to look, right? It's a depth effect for the clock, really, more than anything else.
And I'm playing with that right now, and I think you're right.
Okay.
Okay.
That's good to know.
All right, good homework assignment. Okay, Charles Anthony, you were next.
Hi, thank you. Well, the question I had was back in the first years of the iPhone, when you connect and you didn't update the iPhone through the cloud, it was through your computer. I'd connect it to the Mac and it would pop up, I think it was iTunes, and you could then organize all the apps. You can move them from one screen to the other. And that makes it a lot easier than doing it with your finger and holding it down and doing the wiggle and all the whole thing. Is there anything, any way of doing that? I think Douglas mentioned it on here. Douglas Cody mentioned to use Apple Configurator, but I've seen that doesn't have very good reviews in the App Store. So is there anything else that you could use for that?
Not that I'm aware of. I know what you're talking about. There used to be the ability to rearrange home screens and app icons on a great big screen, dragging them around on the Mac.
Right.
Apple Configurator is really built for schools and enterprises to set up like a whole fleet of devices the same way. Do that with your single device if you want to, but that might be kind of overkill. So no, I'm not aware of another way to do it other than right on the iPhone screen.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Okay, Jim Cutler, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Well, my question is, how do I deal with fat fingers trying to move icons around and they insist on becoming folders? And while I was following you around the displays option in settings, I happened to notice, well, yeah, it says display zoom, large text. Well, the newer iOS, when I looked at that, has illustrations that weren't there in the previous versions, so I never saw them. But it's pretty obvious from the illustrations with that, when you go to larger text, the buttons are larger too. So you helped me learn something new about how to control my iPhone that's changed since I learned on my iPhone 4.
Okay.
Thank you.
I can't do anything for your fat. I can't do anything for your fat fingers though. So we're all blessed with that.
Absolutely. Michael Rath, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, this has all been very interesting. So my question is, can you put different wallpapers on different screens, home screens?
No, the wallpaper for the home screen is the same throughout.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Kenneth Barnes, do you want to ask your question? Kenneth Barnes' question was, when our teachers very kindly show us how to arrange our screens, how do they restore everything to their preferred layout at the end of the class?
Well, I'll tell you what this teacher does. He doesn't make us many changes. He hopes to make as few changes as possible, or at least ones that can be destructive. So I just go back and kind of redo what I did before.
Yeah, manually. That's right there. It's all done manually. Okay. Well, I have possibilities. Two people have commented on this. I'm not sure that iMazing really allows you to do this. Tim Baker, can you please unmute yourself and make your comment that you just put in the chat?
Okay, I just checked online, and yes, it does have the capability of rearranging the apps.
Good, wonderful.
So I will put a link to that page that I'm looking at right now into the chat.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Tim.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I got a yes, ma'am today. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, Stephen Ramirez, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
I'm sorry, no question.
No question. Just want your hand up. Okay. Do we have any more questions? Now's the time. Dave DiCarlo, you unmuted yourself. Do you have a question? Okay. Do we have any more questions? Ed Adams, you have a question? Your hand is up.
It's not a question. It's that there's an app called iMazing, which does all of the things that the old Apple application for maintaining your music and everything else on your iPhones, and it actually works very, very well. So it's something that is an answer to the previous question.
Absolutely.
So that's for rearranging apps on the. You can do that using iMazing on the Mac.
Yes.
Yes. Jim, are you asking, is the layout stored in a backup? What's your? Please explain your question, Jim. Cutler. Jim, I want to answer your question, but we need to hear it so we can understand it. Go ahead.
Well, I have to get my cursor in the right place. This magic cursor appearing on two different machines can be confusing. Anyway, I was wondering about using, at least for teaching purposes, would it be reasonable to restore from a backup of your preferred layout for a teaching tool?
Oh, I suppose you could do that. But it might take more time than it was worth to restore.
Well, yeah, I guess it depends on your own situation. And the other comment is that's an idea about iMazing that I hadn't thought about, because I use it mostly for forensic records of text messages.
Okay, thank you, Jim. We have one more question. Gail Lawley, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
I recently had a driver drive me to the airport, and he managed to share his screen with me, his map screen on his iPhone with my iPhone, so I could tell exactly where he was. How did he do that?
Well, he might have used a feature in the Maps app called Share ETA.
Okay.
Start a journey somewhere with turn-by-turn directions. You can tap a button in the Maps app that says Share ETA, and then you can share your journey with somebody else. It shows up right in their Maps app. That's what I think probably happened. Unless if this was an Uber or a Lyft driver, maybe they've got something in their software that can do that.
No, this was not Uber or Lyft. This
Okay.
was okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right, wonderful. All right. With that, it is 12:44, and I believe that it is time to end our session. Mike, I want to thank you for such a wonderful, wonderful presentation on iPhone. And with that, I'm going to hand it over. First, I'm going to ask everyone, can you please unmute yourself and thank Mike?
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you presentation, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you,
Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Great
Thank you. Well
presentation.
done. Well
Okay.
done.
All right.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, Dan, all yours.
All right. Yes, thank you, Mike. That was great. Good information in there. And don't forget this week.
Spotlight yourself, Dan.
My screen. Yeah. Hold on here a second. I think it's this one here. Don't forget this next week. I'm going to be talking about Airtable, but more important is this Saturday we're going to be looking at security and all that good stuff, which can be very important. It's security is a moving target, something that we have to look at on a regular basis, unfortunately, and we're going to be looking at that with Dennis. So if you haven't signed up for that, you want to sign up for that. Outside of that, I want to thank you for your support, or we want to thank you for your support, and we will see you and hopefully on Saturday, but if not, we'll see you next week.
All righty. Be well, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.